Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, in our play-by-email game against XTRG. It is May, God, I wish it was May. It is March 3rd of 1942. The Japanese offensive into the South Pacific has gained quite a few valuable bases for him, but has not made a lot of progress as of late. He has sent carriers east toward Palmyra. He also had some cruisers out that way, but he hasn't really landed anywhere recently. I'm sure now that I'm saying that, what's this? There's something up here. Some Japanese task force right here. But anyway, Japanese submarine just fired some torpedoes against a troop transport of ours that's heading south, I believe it is. Fortunately, the torpedoes missed. But yeah, anyway, now that I say that he hasn't made much progress in the South or Central or Eastern Pacific, I'm sure he'll land something there soon to do just that. Meanwhile, he has switched over to nighttime bombing over Singapore here. You can see he launched 12 sallies against Singapore in a nighttime bombing raid against the airfield there, and woof, he got hit pretty hard by flak. I don't know if the KI-21 is a bad bomb. Oh, no, he came in at 6,000 feet. Wow. So he tried to come in at 6,000 feet to stay real low to have some effect by hitting the airfield. I'm assuming he probably was trying to damage or destroy some of our carrier fighters that were still based at Singapore. As a reminder, we had a carrier raid where we had a carrier event where we sent 100 carrier fighters into Singapore. We ambushed a bomber formation of his, was it last turn or 2 turns ago? I think it was last turn. Well, the results were last turn. And he obviously is trying to hit those guys either on the field or what's left. We pulled almost all the planes out. I think there were 8 left that couldn't leave because they were damaged or they had mechanical repairs or other things like that needed to occur. And so he's obviously using these sallies to try and do some damage to that airfield. You can see here, out of 12 bombers, 7 of them were casualties in one way or another. 2 were destroyed, 5 were damaged. That is a very rough day for those Sally pilots, or night, I guess, as they came in at 6,000 feet, and Allied flak over Singapore just shredded them. Wow. Okay. So the Japanese sub is firing. No! Damn it! All right, well, there's 2 torpedoes into the side of an empty troop transport here, east on the eastern coast of Australia. Oh, man. Torpedo hits on fire, and she goes down. So, troop ship off the eastern coast of Australia goes down. Meanwhile, U.S. sub at Buna firing against a Japanese patrol boat, which had heavy damage. What did it have heavy? Maybe it struck a mine? I think we heard something hit something and explode yesterday, but we didn't get a report. I don't know why a patrol boat would have heavy damage, unless, did we bomb them maybe with the Dauntlesses a couple turns back? In any event, the patrol boat there already has heavy damage. Unfortunately for us, we can't hit a heavily damaged patrol boat with torpedoes. Frankly, even if we did, it probably would have been a hit, but no explosion Mark 14 special. Anyway, Japanese light cruisers doing an amphibious landing here to reinforce his troops at Ambon. He obviously doesn't think he has enough troops there, so he moves 3 light cruisers in. That is going to be landing additional troops. You can see they're landing over the beach. No casualties there for him. Yeah, G.I. Joe, a lot of Japanese flags on the map. By the way, thanks for the follow. So you followed 6 minutes ago. Also, Vipernt 07, thank you for the follow as well. Dust off the old Ironsides and go get them. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So more ASW stuff going on off the northwest coast of Timor. Like a G-Man, thanks for the bits. Free money is the best money, right? Whether it's bits that you get for watching ads, or if you're an Amazon Prime member and you get, I think you 1 free sub every month if you're an Amazon Prime member that you can give to different streamers and stuff. It's always fun. I always wonder about the economics of that. For Amazon to be giving, I think it's like $2.50 or something like that. Or no, a sub is $5, but a Prime, I don't know, whatever it is. for Amazon to be giving, like, that much money away every month for free. Theoretically, that could be like a third of your Prime membership, couldn't it? This volume's too loud in my ear. All right, so Japanese bombers are hitting Bataan, where we have a large pocket of soldiers of ourselves here. 44 Sallies coming in here at 24,000 feet. 10 Sallies damaged by flak, 2 Anns damaged by flak. Quite a lot. That's a quarter of the formation here hit by flak guns of our defenders here. Very little damage done there. No supply hits either. He's obviously trying to step up the pressure on Bataan, where he really hasn't made any serious move there to hurt our forces. We've just been sitting back behind our supply lines, and we've been doing basically all right in Bataan. He's got 2 divisions that are boxing us in. But we're just largely, eating tea and biscuits back there and enjoying the fact that we're all on vacation, and then we've got plenty of supply probably for at least another month before things start to get dire. Unless he starts upping the pressure, right? Like, if he keeps bombing us, that could drive our supply usage up. It could make things go more quickly. But last I checked, we were still over 20,000 supply there, which is quite a lot. Even though the large formation will chew through it relatively quickly, it's not too concerning yet. Meanwhile, you can see here KI-43 1C Oscars are attacking our bomber formation. We have 8 B-17s of the E and D variants on their way into Nomaya here, trying to hit the airfield there. And you can see we are taking some damage, but the good thing for us is that the B-17s are relatively fast compared to the Japanese bombers, and also super durable compared to the Japanese fighters. And so, really, unless he brings in zeros, he's going to have a hard time destroying our bombers, although he certainly could shoot them up a little bit. The Fortress is both great in the sense that it can take a ton of damage, but also a little bit, frustrating because you want more of them, and you don't get a ton of Fortresses. You get a lot of B-24s later on in the war, but you don't get a lot of heavy bombers early on. Meanwhile, Eris, thanks for the Twitch Prime sub. I do appreciate that. Did the naval search just say carriers? Where were we looking, Mexicans? I didn't see a naval search where it said something about carriers, unless I missed it. Yeah, that's a good description of the 17s. Easy to shoot up, hard to shoot down. You can see 3 B-17s damaged in that raid. They bombed from 15,000 feet. The B-17Es were bombing at extended range. The Ds were bombing at normal range. So you can see here 24 500-pounders dropped by the Ds, and then you've got 12 500-pounders dropped by the Es. The interesting thing is the E is a newer variant. It's more heavily armed. It has a lower turret, but because of that extra defensive armaments, it actually is a shorter range. So the newer bomber actually is more restricted on range. The B-24 is definitely better for the Pacific. There's a reason the 17 worked more in Europe and the 24 worked more in the Pacific, and that's because the 24, while not as durable as the 17, had way better range for operating at these long ranges. West coast of New Caledonia is a task force. I'd have to take a look at that. I don't have anything to respond to it. I mean, if there's cruisers, sure, but we also know he's got Bettys in and around the Coral Sea, so it would be difficult for us to safely engage over there. Meanwhile, we're going to fast forward through some of this recon phase. More Japanese fighters sweeping over the Dutch East Indies here. I won't say the name of that town because I screw it up every single time. Meanwhile, we got some Nells coming in and hitting the airfield. They're bombing at 20,000 feet. He's definitely trying to keep out of flak range there. If I could manipulate Allied production, like Japan gets total control over its production, but if I could manipulate Allied production, I would, not make so many what are they? Are they Kingfishers? The float plane recon vehicle, but it's very short range, and I would make way more B-17s, at least early war. All right, so that ends that phase. Can you even hit the jungle at 20,000 feet? I'm assuming you can hit the jungle if it's underneath you. P. Warner. Okay, so Japanese bombardment attack at Singapore, so he's bombarding and he's bombing there. We'll go ahead and fast forward through this a little bit. You can see some of his AV is actually going down a little bit. Then again, so are some of our units. It's kind of fluctuating. I don't know how much stock to put into any of that. He should have way more artillery and be able to batter our forces down a little bit, but that one actually wasn't too bad. So we lose 94 casualties, 3 squads destroyed, 7 disabled. He loses 1 squad destroyed, 3 disabled, so not a push. He had a slight advantage there, but his bombardment isn't free of cost. You can see he's got about 2,000 assault value there. We've got a little bit over 900, but with those fort levels, I think, still at 3 or so, it does help. Meanwhile, another Japanese attack at Port Moresby. The 56th Division is attacking our 44th and 45th Indian Brigades, as well as our Australian forces here, the 49th Battalion, the 53rd Battalion, and some base force units. Interesting, Sean Mack. So there's mods that let you modify your production as the Allies. So you can see this attack did not go well for us. Japanese deliberate attack at Moresby. 12,000 attackers, 112 guns, 86 vehicles, 395 assault value. The defenders have 9,600 men, 56 guns, 54 vehicles, 253 assault value. You can see the Japanese engineers reduced the fortifications down to 0, but that's actually before the attack. So the combat results were 1-to-1 odds at fort level 0. So that's actually good. And what I mean by that is we lost slightly fewer men than him in terms of disabled. He lost 48 disabled, we lost 47. We did lose 8 squads destroyed, so in the net, he benefits slightly. But I think the interesting thing here, also he loses 22 engineers disabled. But I think the interesting thing here is that the fight was done at level 0 fortifications. So that does hopefully indicate that if he attacks again, we'll be able to hold our own. Like, the bigger concern, I mean, Moresby's going to fall. And honestly, it could fall in the next day, next 2 days, next 3 days. I've had some people say, like, reinforce it, send more troops. There's 2 things there. 1, don't reinforce failure, because you're just going to create more prisoners of war. 2, to get to Moresby, I've got to fly through GM3 hell. I've got to get transports through long-range bombers that are armed with torpedoes with very limited fighter support able to be given. I don't have any fighters that can reach Moresby on an escort mission. If I fly him to Moresby and Moresby falls, we'll lose the entire fighter wing. So I don't really think that's a sound strategy, which means reinforcing is very risky. You probably are going to lose the whole force anyway. Unless I'm going to send, like, a brigade or more, it's not likely to accomplish anything. And frankly, there's a good chance they'll get sunk on their ships and they won't even arrive in time. So the one positive with this attack, though, is that it was done at level 0 fortifications, because the engineers reduced the fort level to 0, and that we still managed a 1-to-1 odds, and that we didn't fall. So it might, he might need to wait for a little bit more supply. He might need to wait for another few days, maybe even a week. Moresby will fall, but every day that it holds is good for us, and hopefully it continues to hold out for a little bit longer. Because that's a full Japanese division also that's not able to do other things like invade Australia at the moment. Same reason that I can't evacuate P. Warner. If I send ships into Moresby and I try and pull out, they're very likely to get sunk en route, and I'd rather at least delay him rather than just give him free casualties on boats. That's a pretty minor turn. Airfield expands to level 7 at Suva. We'll probably stop building the airfield there. Chikikang expands to level 3 forts. It was at 0 like 3 days ago. Those engineers are cranking that fort level up. I mean, Warner, the one thing maybe I could consider doing is seeing if we can use air transports to pull troops out, but I don't know if I want to do that. I don't think there's any units there that, like, we absolutely can't afford to lose. There's no headquarters units there or anything like that. If there was a headquarter unit, I would definitely try and pull it out. But if I pull the actual units and troops out via air, then, I mean, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of losing a bunch of units just for the hell of it. Okay, you can see some different units are arriving and other things like that are occurring. We're going to go ahead and load this up. Reports and losses to rule out replay errors. Okay, we can take a look at intelligence report here. If we take a look at aircraft losses, 5 enemy Sallies were shot down by flak today, apparently. So I'm assuming a big portion of that was over Singapore, the 2 we saw destroyed, but potentially some of it over Bataan as well. 2 Japanese Oscar fighters were also lost, 1 in air-to-air combat, 1 in an operational loss. Wonder if one of those was shot down by our B-17s. 1 G4M1 Betty was lost via ops losses. A Jake, a Kate, actually 2 different variants of the Kate, lost via ops losses, probably operating off as carriers in the Eastern Pacific. We did lose 1 Catalina to ops losses. We lost 1 B-26 Marauder to ops losses. I took a look at the operational report, and this pilot, unfortunately, was killed in a crash landing on a training mission, so sucks for him. Meanwhile, we lost 1 B-17D Flying Fortress. That's unfortunate. It was shot down in air-to-air combat, presumably a plane lost over Nomaya. And then we lost 1 B-339D in air-to-air combat over the Dutch East Indies. Total tally for the day, 10 Japanese aircraft lost, 5 Allied aircraft lost, and that's the situation there. Meanwhile, ships sunk today. Last turn, the Republic, the troop transport that was sunk off the eastern coast of Australia, was a 17 Victory Point troop transport. She could make 14 knots, and she could travel a long, long way. She looks like she might have been a converted passenger liner or something like that. It's an APL line class. So there's that. That kind of sucks. So that all checks out. I don't think we lost any ground units that turn. If we take a look at date killed, yeah, nothing was lost that turn. Let's top pilots. We lost 2 KIA pilots, 2 wounded in action. None of the aces. So there's that. I don't know. So I thought we saw something. There was a sighting of something red in the replay report. It was actually like right here, or was it here or here? Somewhere west of New Caledonia. But we don't see it now. So I don't really know what that means. SIGINT doesn't really tell us anything about it. I feel like I wish SIGINT sometimes would be like, you know, the carriers are here. I feel like I never get that. Sometimes you get radio transmissions on different hexes that'll tell you there's like a task force there. But I wish the SIGINT was a little bit more explicit for the Allies. It feels like it should be, right? We're in a March of 42. The Allies should be reading Japanese messages and code like they're, you know, just picking up a book and reading straight out of it, right? Looks like the Japanese Air Force unit is moving to Swingakang. So as a reminder here, he did take Sing Koang up here. It's a level 3 airfield. He can definitely base G3Ms out here to try and sweep west against our carriers. Fortunately, our carriers are 24 hexes away from Swingakang, so I don't think there's anything he can hit. And if he can send anything, if he sends bombers against him, he certainly can't send fighters that far. So that would be a little bit reckless, I think. Meanwhile, we didn't lose any fighters last turn. We got the bulk of our fighters back to their carriers. We did have to leave 8 fighters behind. We had 6 Wildcats and 2 Fulmars. However, good news, I flew 3 of those 6 Wildcats to Batavia, and I flew both of the Fulmars to Batavia. And then what I actually did was something kind of neat. So what you can actually do is when an aircraft flies to Batavia from Singapore, you do it. Well, you have the option of doing it in Singapore also, but you can disband the group. If you disband the group, it will take any of the serviceable aircraft, not the maintenance or damaged aircraft, but any of the aircraft that are marked as serviceable will actually go into the replacement pool, and the pilots will also go to the reserve. So rather than having to kind of like play some kind of risky game where I sort of, for a handful of fighters, keep the carriers sort of kind of close to Batavia. It's actually within range right now. But like rather than have to limit my ability to sail the carriers south and get them back toward Australia, I decided to fly the F4 F3s to Batavia. There were 3 of them that got back to Batavia. They were all in good shape, so I just disbanded those groups. The 3 pilots are back in the Navy pool, or will be in a couple of days, and the 3 aircraft are all back in the Navy pool right away. So when our carriers get back to port, they can just pull replacements, and they can immediately benefit from that. So that's good. You can see the F4 F3. We have 3 in pool that I got from that. Additionally, yeah, but Sean, rather than risk the Hermes to an enemy sub or something up here all by itself, there's no reason to do that for like 8 aircraft. So All I did was I disbanded it, and the pilots will be out for like a month, basically, but that's fine. When we pull reserves or when we go back into port for refit in April or something like that, they can get that. Meanwhile, the Fulmer group, I'm not going to disband it quite yet because one of the aircraft is damaged, and I don't want to just lose it. So it'll be better in 2 days. I'll do the same thing in 2 days with the Fulmers. And then I presumably will do the same thing with the F4, F3s that are still in Singapore. There's 3 that are still damaged here from 2 different fighter groups here. You can see that one of them will be ready tomorrow. One is in 4 days. And then in this other one here, VF6-1, they have an aircraft that'll be ready in 2 days. So assuming they're not destroyed on the ground by Japanese bombers, that's what I'll do there. Hamish, nothing super exciting. This was kind of a slow turn, if you will, after a bunch of frankly, very exciting turns. This turn was a little bit more low-key. One other thing I did is I pulled the Buffalo Squadron back to Batavia. It had 0 planes left. One of the Buffalo Squadrons had 0 planes left. The 36G4 Dutch squadron, and I replaced them with Hurricanes that are in the Dutch pools. So there were 15 Hurricanes in the Dutch pools. So we are replacing a squadron of 12 Buffaloes that were down to 0 Buffaloes because they'd all been shot down with 12 Hurricanes. And you can see here we'll get 1 tomorrow. It's going to take up to 10 days to get them all out of maintenance and ready. But these are groups that cannot withdraw. They cannot disband. If we disband them, they just go away for good. So I did go ahead and I replaced those crews with Hurricanes. We will, in I think 60 days, get 2 fighter squadrons that had been Demons and I think there were Demons and Hawks. They were down to 0, but they weren't restricted HQs, so I actually disbanded them, and assuming the Dutch East Indies have fallen in the next 60 days, they'll actually spawn at Mombasa, and then I can go ahead and give them new modern aircraft then, assuming we have some in the pool. If you were to move the carriers off map, would they possibly line up with the arrival of Hornet and give me a task force of 6 carriers arriving at the U.S. West Coast? In theory, Bernana 23, yes, I could do that. I haven't decided if I want to do that or not yet. I am sailing the carriers south for a little bit. The Hornet is arriving, I think, in 7 days. So if we take a look at ship availability, yep, the Hornet will arrive in a week, but it arrives on the U.S. East Coast, so then it has to go from the East Coast to Panama, and then from Panama out to the West Coast, which realistically means it's probably 2 weeks away from Panama, and then, or at least a week away from Panama. I'm not quite sure on the transit time. It's at least a week. And then from Panama to the West Coast is another 1 to 2 weeks. So you're probably looking at, it does come on map in 7 days, but it probably won't be to the West Coast for another 20 days or so, which actually would be enough time for me to sail these carriers all the way to the West Coast if we wanted. If I move the carriers to Cape Town is about 10 to 14 days away. I mean, the carriers move much more quickly, so they might get there in less time. But even if it takes like 6 to 7 days to get to Cape Town and then another 6 to 7 days to get to Panama, you're still, and maybe they meet the Hornet up at Panama, and then you're talking, another 2 weeks to get back to the West Coast. So in any event, you're talking about a month before the Hornet is really ready for operations. The other alternative is that, if I move these guys down to the west coast of Australia, I can move the Hornet directly from the east coast to Cape Town and then have them meet up at Perth as well. So we could have the U.S. carrier Hornet meet the other carriers on the west coast in Australia probably in about a month, or we could sail our carriers all the way to the east coast probably in about a month, or we could sail our carriers off the west coast of Australia, off the west part of the map, and then meet up at Panama and get into the west coast probably in about a month. So in any event, we have a bunch of options on how we want to manage that. I really don't have to make a decision today, so I probably won't. Meanwhile, our replenishment task forces, not those guys, those are tankers. Our replenishment task force, why are those guys sailing so close? I do not want to sail that close to the west coast of the Dutch East Indies with those tankers. That is just asking to get hit by, I'm assuming he sent some patrol aircraft or something like that looking for my carriers. That would be the logical thing to do. So we probably shouldn't sail right by where he's presumably going to be looking for us. So we'll have to sweep a little bit further west well out of range of anything. With those tankers, we have a surface task force here that's patrolling off the western coast of Australia with some light cruisers, mainly shielding our convoys that are moving in and out in case he tries to dash at them from Timor or something like that. 32,000 more fuel coming in from Colombo here on these tankers into the west coast of Perth, or of Australia. Some light cruisers are on their way up to Colombo to be repaired. An additional 17,000 fuel on some tankers is coming in to Australia from the west as well. We've got one fleet oiler here with about 10,000 fuel on its way up to link up with our carriers to refuel them. It's moving at full speed, mainly just to get out and potentially away from where there could be enemy submarines waiting. I thought we had another tanker task force around here somewhere. Oh, we do. Are these guys not loaded up? They're not. Go ahead and dock. Replenish task force in port. Is there no fuel in port? There's definitely fuel there. Huh. Interesting. That's interesting. So because I had them set to not refuel, which I meant was they wouldn't refuel each other, they also didn't refuel at port. So anyway, I just topped off these two Dutch oilers. They both have both don't carry very much fuel, but we just topped off their tanks. And so they'll start moving west as well. So we've got 3,000 fuel roughly on two Dutch fleet oilers, and then we've got 8,000 fuel on Australian oiler. All moving up to reach the carriers. So assuming they all get there safely, that's about 13,000 fuel that we can bring to the carriers to replenish their stores. I don't actually think that's enough to completely replenish them. If we take a look here, the Lexington's full fuel complement is like 6,000 fuel, or just shy of it. So granted, she's not anywhere near empty, but you can see here the Saratoga is the same deal. So, and then with all these heavy cruisers as well, they don't use as much fuel, but some of these guys are real gas guzzlers. The Indomitable's below half on its fuel. It probably won't be enough to get them up to full fuel complements, but it should be enough to allow us to keep them at sea. Yeah, I mean, I am on the way to Perth. Oh, no, you're talking about my super division? I wouldn't call it a super division. It definitely has its weak points. But the 6th Australian Division did arrive at port. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can get it to dock. So actually before I do that, are there any task forces that are docked? We'll undock these guys. Oh, these guys don't even have any fuel left on them. So let's do this. Let's transfer the AR to port. It's a repair ship, so that's good to have. Then we'll go ahead and undock the remaining 22,000 tons because they have no fuel left on them. They've already unloaded their fuel of 26,000. And then we'll have these guys. I think we'll head north to Colombo. I'm trying to think, like, I've been sort of bringing a little bit of fuel in from Cape Town, but Cape Town doesn't really have that much fuel. It's got 70,000. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to shuttle convoys from the U.S. East Coast to Cape Town to get the fuel numbers up there more so we can use that as a supply point for Australia. So with New Caledonia in the enemy hands, I've been looking at ways to continue supplying Australia with enough fuel. Perth was really the main port for us as of the beginning of the war when the Dutch East Indies were in the enemy's control, or were not yet in the enemy's control. And so I pulled like 200,000 fuel out of there into Perth. Now that the Dutch East Indies is kind of a no-go zone, I have, I'll disband those guys. I have shifted my fuel to the U.S. East Coast, but I don't have enough tankers on the East Coast, and most of my tankers were on the West, thanks to the Dutch East India efforts. So now I've been kind of pulling supply both from Colombo, which I'm shuttling in from the Middle East, and from Cape Town, as much as I can anyway. All right, so we pulled those 22,000 off the port. Their mission really shouldn't be support. Their mission should be tanker. ASW... We'll disband those guys for the moment. They were guarding the troop transports as they came into port. And then cargo will disband as well. So that leaves us with the tankers, which are about to leave, and the transports. These guys can't dock because their task force has too much tonnage, but I can transfer some shipping out of this task force. I forgot I had the Royal Sovereign at Perth, by the way. So we'll take the light cruiser here. That'll reduce our tonnage by 6,000. Then that Dutch destroyer. And then I think we'll take these cargo ships that don't have any troops on them. Okay. Still too large to dock. By the way, meanwhile, we also got some Hurricanes. So we have the 136th RAF Squadron flying Hurricane Trope 2s, all at now in Australia. And then we also got some Blenheim 5s here as well. Were some of those ships not fully offloaded yet? I thought we had 24 of them, not 19. But I don't see it. So maybe I was wrong. Okay, so anyway, so how much can we can load up to 60,000 tons. The task force currently is sitting at, let's just do this. All right. So go ahead and dock these guys and unload. 44,000 tons. Does it keep us within the efficiency rating of 36,000? No. You're much more efficient. So I think 60,000 is the roadstead and 36,000 is the cranes or something like that. But in any event, so we'll have these guys unload. They're docked. Then we'll have this group here unload. They're not docked. So they're unloading, and this is most of like the heavy equipment that's still unloading, by the way. So, well, actually some of the AF squadrons as well, although some of the troops are already unloaded. So you can see here, actually a lot of the combat value was immediately unloaded, 242 AIF Section 42 squads, as well as some of the other elements here. So about 2/3 of the infantry is off, not any of the Bren sections. A lot of half the anti-tank guns are already off. 40mm Bofors are also more than half off. 3-inch mortars are completely off. 25-pounder guns, not very much unloaded yet. You definitely want to be docked for that. Engineers not unloaded yet, and not anywhere near the support and motorized support are off the ships yet. You can't read a word of what's on the screen? That's weird. Anybody else have any of those same issues? Is the screen blurry or something for you guys? Not for you, like a G-Man? Small text. Okay. Sorry, guys. That's the fact is this is a 10-year-old game that you have to manipulate to run in 1080p to even really work well on a modern monitor. And so when you're trying to stream that and share that with other people, sometimes you get issues with text. I've had people have the same issues, not on my streams, but I've seen people have the same issues on like Out of the Park Baseball, which is kind of like a spreadsheet type game. It's just not always. It's not going to be a great game to stream on a lot of screens. Probably not very good at all on like handhelds like phones. But anyway, this it is a game that's from like originally the core of this game is from like 2006. So that's just the reality of it. With that being said, though, guys, in terms of it being on GOG or Steam, no, you can buy it. If you are interested in it, you have to go to Matrix Games directly to look for it. So you go to matrixgames.com, or I think it's also, is it on Slitherine's website as well? But in any event, that's the publisher of the game. It's relatively expensive. It is sort of like a garage type game, like board games that take up like a whole garage, which are similarly priced. But yeah, that's where you can get it, matrixgames.com. They do have other games by the same developer that are slightly less old, like War in the East. They have a sequel to War in the East coming out later this year, and that's available on Steam. So I think, is War in the West on Steam also? All right, back to the game. The attack at Port Moresby reduced the fortifications there. We're actually still good on supply, which is kind of unfortunate, because if he takes the base, then it's going to give him a lot of free supply. Meanwhile, our engineers apparently immediately rebuilt the fortifications to level 1, unless the combat result was wrong. Let's take a look at Moresby. No. Port Moresby attack. Nope. Combat result is right. They reduced fortifications to 0. We just instantly rebuilt the fortifications. So that's good, I guess. If I sink APs, I cripple enemy morale. Huh. Have to check that out. By the way, Clog Tech, thanks for the follow as well, 13 minutes ago. I'm going to see if I can get more aircraft out. The Whirlways are repaired, so I don't want to give them free victory points here. We'll pull these out to Horn Island. Oh, I thought that's where the rest of the unit was. Nope, they moved off to Karenins. My bad. Meanwhile, the Banshees, where are they? I moved them to Brisbane? I don't remember doing that. In any event, moving to Charterstown for now. So we'll get those aircraft out of Moresby. There's only one Whirlaway left there. A lot of shipping at both Ley and Buna. We've got subs on both. The Cuttlefish is almost out of torpedoes. Did we use mines with her? I can't remember. We need to put more subs into Ley. Fellow oxygen users. Am I interested in having 12 instead of 9 Sea Hurricanes, Squadron OB Indomitable, and 15 instead of 12 Fulmers? Maybe, Pat. Maybe post it in one of my videos on YouTube. I probably won't be able to read through one of those explanations on stream. I know there's some different interesting ways you can finagle air groups and things like that. These guys are returning because they're damaged. 021. Your patrol zone's decent. Did you have a good captain? 61 aggression. That's not bad. Oh, you're already on your way there. All right. Continue, sir. Continue. Meanwhile, I don't know. We saw a red dot down here, so we saw something in this area, which makes me pretty hesitant to move anything at the moment. I don't know what he's sailing around in the Coral Sea. Our minesweepers are on their way, or layers are on their way back to Brisbane, hugging the coast. We've got the WA Holbrook also on the way back, not quite hugging the coast. We probably should do that. We can route by coastal. We've got different subs patrolling other places in the Coral Sea. There is apparently some level of detection on these cargo ships moving south from Brisbane. I don't know what he's detected by. Could probably take a look at the ops report. Okay. Just says float plane near Brisbane. Could be anything. Sights Japanese patrol near Pago Pago. I think that's just patrol plane. Oh, I forgot the ABDA command here. So we're moving ABDA into Batavia, you can see. ABDA HQ's up to 324 load. So that's more than half, I think. Or wait, no, that's what's still left at Batavia. We're flying it to Sabang, I think. So we've got 216 of it is at Sabang. Doesn't look like any of it got out to Rangoon yet. Aren't we ordering some of those guys to pick guys up? We're not. Troop transport. Set destination Rangoon. Huh. So I might actually have to fly them out to Sabang. Pick up ABDA. Transport them to Rangoon, right? No, it's too far. They can't make it. Really? Don't you get the maximum range on a troop transport? I thought we get the maximum shuttle range. Or is it because I already moved them this turn? Okay. Yeah, so the maximum extended is 24, which is what we're flying out of Batavia with, is we're going above the troop transports up here. The PBYs are flying at 28 hexes, which is... So wouldn't the maximum range be what you can fly at? Or do you only get half the range, you're saying? Well, shit. How am I going to get these guys out? Guess I can fly these guys down to Sabang. Troop transport. Pick up ABDA. And then send them to... Do we want to send them to Rangoon, I guess? So we can do that. Cut all the transport off. We're trying to move them with like 6 U.S. Catalinas. Move another 5 down here. Then we'll go ahead and do troop transport to Rangoon. Okay. Glad I moved the lodestars, and I'll just have to fly them back again. Meanwhile, we have these P-40s, which I've already, started pulling back to Rangoon. So we'll go ahead and set these guys back up here to fly north with drop tanks, because it takes the drop tanks to get them that far. They'll combine with their original squadron, and then we've got the Air Cobras as well, using drop tanks. Get them back to Rangoon as well. Okay, so combine back down to that. We've still got about 4 aircraft left from the original attempt to ferry him into Singapore that I decided to cancel. So I sent him, and then I changed my mind. These guys are currently set to cap at 60%. Their fatigue's kind of high for that. What's all of their fatigue? You can see the Airacobras and the Warhawks both have kind of a high fatigue. I like seeing the fatigue under 10%, so we'll drop their cap level down to 50. I've mainly issued the cap orders for 2 reasons. One, we can gain air experience by doing cap missions, so we can get these guys to be a little bit better. The other factor is we don't really know. Like, the bad guys could decide that they want to... should set all these guys to 0 range, by the way. The bad guys could decide that they want to come knocking and start bombing at Rangoon. So I'm going to set all these guys to range 0 because I don't want the cap to leak. I just want the cap over Rangoon. What are these guys? Oh, these are photo recon. We know there's 2 units here. We know there's 5 units at Bangkok. What does he have down there? Won't tell us a lot. There might just be like support units. It is a major port. I think it also produces some oil, or it's a refinery or something. I don't want to switch. Why would I upgrade to the Buffalo? That's going to have way worse range, isn't it? So we'll go do a recon mission south over Bangkok. Meanwhile, some of our group should probably stand down. These DC-2s, by the way, 30, 15, so half of, what would that be? Would it be 15? How far is Sebang? It's 19, so there's no sense in sending those guys. We'll fly them back to Lido. There's no sense because they can't reach Sebang and back. So we'll get those guys back on supply transport into Kunming, which is 10 hexes, so extended range, less effective, but still works. I'm trying to see here. These Blenheim IFs, we can probably stand down. No. All right, these Beauforts are on photo recon. Those are night fighters. Actually, can we get them to Singapore by any chance? No. You know what would be interesting is flying these guys against... If he's going to keep hitting... All right, let's do this. I'm going to fly these guys into Sebang. Going to keep them stood down. But this is a night fighter group. The Blenheim IF is a two-engine night fighter, really. I mean, it can do port attacks and airfield attacks as well, but it can also do night fighting. So in the event that he's going to keep bombing Singapore at night, I'm going to fly those guys into Singapore with their two-engine madnesses. We're going to fly a night fighting mission, and we're going to see if we can't shoot up his sallies a little bit. Because I don't think escorts fly at night. These guys have good night fighting capabilities. They're not good in daytime fighting, but night fighting, they got it. They don't have radar, though, which is problematic. I feel like most night fighters need radar, but... Thanks for that, Pat. I didn't know about the drop tank thing, so that's why it's... I don't want to be using drop tanks for what it's worth. It eats a lot of supply. I need the drop tanks to ferry the aircraft, but I don't want to be using drop tanks if I'm just sitting at base. Okay, so we have 8 air groups. We've got 103 aircraft, 94 ready. Almost all of them are fighters. What's the exclamation point mean? What does the exclamation point mean? Why do these guys have exclamation points? Yep, I saw that, Pat. 1 transfer per day, P. Warner. Well, they're not removing soon. Maybe that is the fact that they are removed. Let's see, those guys remove in April. It may just mean that they have to be removed. Yeah, I think the other guys... No, these guys remove in May. So maybe remove soon? I don't know. There's different, like, weird, obscure things in this game that you've got to look through the manual to actually understand. The manual's like a 300-page manual for what it's worth. Not sure. In any event. So this group here... What's the Mohawk? Is the Mohawk any good? No, I just want to look at the Mohawk. I don't want to actually upgrade it to him. So we've got 3 Buffaloes that are just kind of chilling. Part of our RAF squadron here that was chewed up. We pulled them back. They need 16 aircraft. I could upgrade them to a Sea Hurricane, but we don't get a lot of those, so I probably won't. Instead, I'll wait to see if we're starting to get Mohawk 4s. Maybe we'll upgrade them to that. What is that aircraft type, though? If we go to the aircraft database, allied aircraft, looking for the Mohawk 4. Oh, I think she's just like a P-36, right? It's not a very good aircraft. It's nice and maneuverable, Now, wait a minute. It's got good maneuverability ratings, 20 plus up to 20,000 feet. That is pretty darn good. It's also got 6 machine guns. That's a pretty good machine gun. Interesting. So is the P-36 not bad? It's very short-ranged. Only 5 hexes. Where is its durability? It's not very fast. Good climb rate. Where's the armor? I don't even see armor. So maybe it's kind of like the Japanese Zero, where it gets blown up real easy. Durability's 28. How does it compare to other aircraft? The Kitty Hawk, which is like a P-40 variant that the Commonwealth Forces used, durability's 31. So not a dramatic difference in durability for the P-40s. P-40 is a pretty rugged aircraft. Hurricane 2B Trope durability is 29. It's interesting. Oh, okay. I didn't even see. I was just looking at durability. So the durability is similar, but the Kitty Hawk has armor. Armor of 1 here for the Hurricane also. So that's probably it. All right. Thanks for the follow there, Ancient Temple. Appreciate it. Okay, so enough with that. What else do we need to do? We've got a bunch of supply in Rangoon. We're up to 50,000 supply. We've got another 1,700 unloading here. Meanwhile, this task force is leaving because they have finished unloading. This task will finish unloading this turn. Actually, we might as well just swap these guys out. The guys with no supply might as well just leave as well. Okay. Some of these guys are topping off their fuel tanks on their way back to Colombo. I'm probably not going to send them back to Cape Town, frankly, just because there's no reason to send them back to Cape Town. I've got a lot of cargo ships sitting in the Bay of Bengal, just kind of chilling, waiting for their turn to line up at Rangoon. So I think I'm going to start shunting them off to different objectives, maybe running shuttle fuel inefficiently into Karachi and then down to Colombo and then down to Australia. That might be a thing we do. But we'll see. Only 6,000 tons docked at Rangoon. We have another 21,000 supply coming in on some light transports here, some AKLs for the most part. So those guys will unload quickly. They'll be able to dock. There's room at the docks. We have another 23,000 supply coming out on these larger cargo ships. So between these two groups, we've got another 47,000 supply about to pour into Rangoon. We're absolutely pouring supplies into Burma. Burma is a supply sink. It very much is. But the reason I'm doing that is the more supplies I can get into Rangoon, the more supplies I can push into China. And that is something that you really want to do, is you want to try and get as much supply as you can into China. You get 2,000 free supply as long as the Burma road here is open, but you actually can get more if you overweight Burma with supplies, and then it gets pulled into China naturally. So 50,000 supplies in Rangoon is good. And all of these other bases are basically up at around the supply levels that I set to them, which is more than the minimum. Even these sort of side bases have more than the 1,000 or the 2,000 that I set for them. So you can see here, Burma is currently overflowing with supplies. Pegu has 13,000. We're trying to build up some fortifications and things like that here. The 18th British Division, meanwhile, is currently packing up. 2 more days till they're packed up on trains, and then they will rail south to Rangoon. The 1st Burma Division, meanwhile, has moved into Rangoon as well. Its fatigue is starting to drop. The base is better there for resting troops in the malaria zone. Rangoon has 70,000 fuel. It does. We are refueling all of these cargo ships when they arrive at Rangoon so that we're pulling less out of places like Cape Town and Colombo, because Rangoon does generate fuel because it has a refinery there. So you can see here there's a 200 refinery, and there's also resources. I think there's other bases throughout Burma that have oil that they generate as well. Not sure where, but there are bases here somewhere. You can see there's a 300 oil and 100 refinery at Magwai. So again, it's an oil supply center in Burma that flows down the railway into Rangoon, where it's refined and turned into fuel and supply. So Rangoon can also generate some of its own supply. But again, trying to overfill it and then move these guys east. If I sent troops to rest, I don't think they build supply, or I don't think they build forts. The main problem, there's two main problems. One, Burma's a malaria zone, and you get penalties for fighting there. And two, and the Japanese, while they get some penalties, I think they actually have benefits as well fighting in jungles versus Commonwealth troops. And the other part is that Rangoon is Burma's largely clear. So there are some hexes here that are jungle hexes, which are harder for the Japanese to advance across. But there's so many roads. There's two main roadways north through Burma, so that he can easily flank. Like if you set a defensive position at Tongo, he can just move north to Prome and then flank you. So you need a lot more troops packed into Burma to effectively defend it. It is a very difficult place to defend. So that's one thing. The other thing is the only real strong hexes, like Rangoon's an urban hex, which makes it very defensible. But if you base your defense on Rangoon, he can just go up and around you, cut you off from supply, and then advance on Burma and then into India while you're isolated down here. Yes, it might take you a while to be overcome at Rangoon, but essentially once these rail lines or these roadways are cut, then the Burma road is cut, and then the supplies stop flowing into China, which makes the entire defense of Burma less relevant. So there's two ways you can defend this. One is you can stick some defensive troops here in the mountains or the jungles that the enemy has to move through, and you get big defensive bonuses through here, which makes it harder for him to move through central Burma. I've also done something similar with Taigun, and I've got some troops I plan to have some troops at Lashio to block the central advance. But then the other portion is that you can defend in the south near Pegu and to the north of Pegu. But these are clear terrains, so you really need to get your fortifications up. I'm trying to get them up higher. My hope is that they're above 4 before he attacks. My other thought is that I could sort of preempt the attack a little bit by moving south on Mulmun and trying to attack the troops down here. I'm assuming they're Royal Thai divisions. We've seen a Royal Thai division at Mulmun that we attacked and drove back. We also saw a Royal Thai division that was just east of Pegu that we attacked and we didn't defeat, and it withdrew maybe to Chiang Mai and maybe it's back over here. But there's two Royal Thai divisions. The thing is, as soon as Singapore falls, he's going to start sending more troops north, maybe even sooner now that we see 5 units here at Bangkok. He may be sending troops north sooner rather than later. So Mulmun could be an interesting direction to go if we can overwhelm those Royal Thai divisions. We can weaken his strength in the theater. We can also force him to retake Mulmun and maybe redirect some of his effort away from Rangoon to buy us more time. We could also move from Mulmun into Raihan, into Thailand, and then see if we can't, short-circuit some of his offensives, although that's probably a little bit overambitious with these really poor roads and, again, moving through the malaria zone. But Mulmun would be a nice base to retake. I'm not too worried about him flanking me south of Pegu. He can't really, He could avoid Burma altogether and make a play for Ceylon, or Ceylon, however you pronounce that. We're pretty weak in that base. It's yeah. All right, all these guys are at Colombo, so we're gonna go ahead and move these guys to combat, so then we can merge the formation. Just because we don't have a lot of strength on this base. Sri Lanka. That's pronounced Sri Lanka. Well, the name of the island on the map. It actually has a good amount of flak, though, 42. If he was to try and bomb it. I think he would probably land on the outlying bases and then advance on Colombo. But if he was able to take Sri Lanka, then he could land on the Indian coast under cover of air and avoid this whole mountain range. Be much more difficult to supply that advance. So it's difficult in either way. There's no roads connecting. It would be very bad. Yes, nitrogen. This is turn-based. It is 1 turn equals 1 day. Meanwhile, in China here, we've got these forces here, 1,700 assault value, are trying to get out. You can see here they're halfway out of this hex. We're trying to cross the river here, where then we will set up a defensive position on good ground, rough ground, north of the river. He's obviously pursued us here with 10 units, although he hasn't been bombing us with his air units there, which is interesting. It also looks like he's weakened his force directly south of Chittagong, where I think we just got our fortification level up to 8, but it looks like he's weakened his troops here. So I wonder if that means he's going to shift his troops either south to the Quayland line or north towards Cyan. We can see there's 3 enemy units here that are driving on Cyan. I've got 1 unit blocking here. With the way the roads work, I'm also doubling back. I've got a force back here with about 1,500 assault value that's doubling back, and it's going to try and move in along these good roadways to take Nanyang. If he left Nanyang lightly guarded, we might be able to catch 3 Japanese units in a bad supply situation, which could be fun. Okay. That's the hope, Pat. I don't think I can smash them. I mean, if they're like 3 divisions or even 3 brigades, the Chinese forces on the offensive and also somewhat low on supply here would not be a good ploy to make an offensive move. But if I move these troops around the flank and take Nanyang in his rear, we'd cut his supply off and we could rapidly make their troops weaken. Okay. If it is his Nanyang force that we saw there, I think it was like 1,200 assault value maybe, which I don't like. You need to be careful again. China only has so much supply, so I don't want to race out super aggressively. Okay. Can he cross the river to the right of Cyan? I don't think so. I think he can move along this rail line. I don't know what this weird road indicator means, but there's no connecting line here. So he could, in theory, I mean, you can cross road territory with no roads, but I don't think it's an easy cross here because he has no supply there. There's no connecting line there. So at the very least, it's inefficient. We do have some units moving east from Cyan. I think we were going to move here because it would be rough terrain, and that would prevent him moving these troops south towards Cyan along this roadway. In the event he did jump, it would also mean he'd be jumping and cutting himself off, because again, I don't think there's any way to trace supply this way. So we are moving a unit east out of Cyan to this rough terrain here to prevent these troops moving west. Now, obviously, if he moved in behind us, it would cut our supply, if that's even possible or efficient. If he puts troops here, then I think we may have to put something here. It's clear terrain where I don't want to fight, but at crossing, he would be doing a shock attack. Also, if I move my troops rough over here into this rough terrain and he moves that way, he'd have no supply line to track. It might trickle P. Warner, but it wouldn't be very efficient. I think it'd be difficult to fight offensively that way. Meanwhile, we're still hanging out at Kaigan. Actually, wow. So our 102nd Filipino Division is now in supply. It has more than the required supply. I don't know where we got it from. We only have 20 supply at the base. Maybe we pulled it from over here. I'm not sure. We're also trying to march this battalion east to reinforce these guys, but I don't know if they're going to get there. Meanwhile, you said we got troops at Tigilap? New troops? There's what? The Van Alten Battalion? Maybe? It's the only unit I can move. Can move them up to Batavia. I got a ship into Oosthaven. It's currently a 9 out of 9 detection, so if he is setting any bombers to anti-shipping duties, that guy's fucked. But he is loading oil, and the intent is to bring 6,000 oil down to Australia to help fuel the I think there's like 1 oil refinery in Australia, so that'll help fuel that for a while, if it ever makes it there. Meanwhile, we also have 1 tanker at Tigilap, which has lower detection levels, 5 out of 5. He still knows something's there. Likewise, he could definitely bomb them. But it's loading up with fuel, so we might lose both these tankers. It's a calculated risk. They're both Commonwealth tankers. Both of them are not worth a ton. 12 victory points and 15 victory points. We're also moving the, it is undetected, but we're moving the De Ruyter and the Nestor to Tigilap. mainly because the Deroiter doesn't have enough fuel to keep up with the carriers, and I don't want to slow the carriers down by forcing them to do, underway replenishment between all of the different vessels here. When these guys are all good fuel-wise and don't need to pull any fuel, it'll take ops points and slow the whole unit down if we do that. So I'd rather avoid that. So that's why I'm sending these cruisers down to Tigilap to refuel. It also has the added benefit of pulling another, 1,000 fuel almost out of the Dutch East Indies. That'll be denied to the Japanese when they eventually take the islands. Long-range cap at Oosthaven. I don't have any aircraft to fly the long-range cap. The carriers are too far west, and I don't want to get him in this area because I'm assuming he is. If I was him, I would be flooding this area with air search. I'm taking the risk. We also have the Van Hammersk, a light anti-aircraft cruiser, which is attempting to keep up with the carrier task force and merge with them. She may have to refuel as well at some point. I got FB in Batavia. I transferred some fighter units or some I don't know. I transferred not fighters. I transferred some units to Batavia, but there's no fighter units that can do anything. I mean, I guess I could order these guys to do a long-range cap, a single Fulmer running cap over Oosthaven. I would guess he would send escorts with him, but who knows? Maybe not. What's more like a destroyer? The Von whatever it is? She's 3,700 tons. She has 400 anti-aircraft value. That is a pretty good anti-aircraft value for a non-battleship or whatever. Like a G-Man, she would be a good unit to have in a carrier task force. She's fast enough. The range is a little bit short to operate with carriers, but she also could make for a good escort of convoys with that much flak. She's not intended to be a surface fighter. She's intended to be a anti-aircraft vessel. That's why she's a CLAA. The upgrade isn't great, but it does bring it up to 578, which is better anti-aircraft than pretty much all my heavy cruisers. She also has air search radar right now, so that's also good. So, she's a pretty decent ship. What about the other guys? The Deroiter. Anti-aircraft value 380, so that's almost as good as the anti-aircraft vessel. And upgrades to 575, so this guy also gets some good Orlikon Bofors. Hopefully they don't sink it, because I need to refuel it. The Big Bang, it might be. I mean, it definitely is a very, very complex game. Meanwhile, I think we're going to wrap it up soon because we've been going for about an hour 20. Not Flaklana, but it's definitely good. Meanwhile, the Japanese carrier task force has moved east of Palmyra. You can see here these CVs are now east of Palmyra. I don't know how far they're going to push it. But I have lost contact with the enemy cruisers. We haven't sighted them. We've got good air recon all to the east, but we're not sure where they're at. They may have pushed further east here, or frankly, we may have just lost sight of them. Looks like it's overcast. Wait, that's the wrong button. It's clear, although it's raining in the south, so they could be down here and we just lost sight because it's raining. It says thunderstorms, so we may have lost sight of them down here. I don't have any detection values on these tankers, so I don't know where he's at. But I do know that he doesn't know that I'm out this way. So that's good. Pascal, our game has been going for over a year now, actually. I thought we just hit the 1-year mark in October, Newhauser. But yeah, none of these ships have been detected yet, which is great. We're trying to get him out of Dodge because if he is pushing his carriers east, we need to try and stay out of the way. Meanwhile, our surface task force here of 2 heavy cruisers and 1 heavy, or actually a total of 4 heavy cruisers, a light cruiser, and 2 destroyers is going to meet up back out this way. And we'll see. I don't want to risk it against the carriers, but I will risk it against his cruisers if the enemy carriers aren't around. So he's obviously, I think he just replenished his carrier. Curious where he sent his tankers. I don't see them. Again, it's heavy rain, though, in some of these hexes, so it's like heavy rain this turn in this hex. Although it says it's supposed to be clear next turn, so we might pick his tankers back up. I don't know if he's going to keep pushing his tankers east. That feels a little bit risky. Again, I'm assuming they're tankers because he moved back here and he met his carriers up with the group, and now the carriers are moving east again. So, who knows? Meanwhile, we're bringing more subs out this way to set up, hopefully, blocking forces on where he might go. We also have subs at Canton, at Baker. We've got sort of a sub line in front of the marshals. We have some tankers running into Pearl Harbor to try and get safe real fast. Some guys headed back to San Francisco. Los Angeles, San Diego. Thanks for the follow there, Tenshu00 and Soap Dish Nick, as well as Gamer Malone. And 69th Panzer also. San Diego, subs going to Pearl Harbor. Ugh, these guys probably shouldn't head to Pago Pago. Let's have them head to Pearl. I hate the idea of sailing these guys this direction. It's a little bit risky. But I'm banking that he's not going to move north of Pearl. If he is going to move north of Pearl, he's going to have to take a very wide berth, and we should see him anywhere in here. We've got good recon values out to the west. And these guys are still far enough away. I don't want to lose those air groups at sea. The flip side of that is I don't want all my shipping to be completely disrupted. We're already sending a shit ton of it to the east through the Panama region. That's going to take like an extra 2-3 weeks of transit time. All of these cargo units. But on the flip side, these units. But on the flip side of that, most of these guys are bound for Australia. The other guy's bound for the Fiji line, which I don't really want to completely abandon. Meanwhile, and speaking of the Fiji line, so I'm taking some of your guys' advice. I'm going to throw a base force unit on Raoul and try and build this base from a dot base into a full-fledged base with an airfield and a port. It does have a 0 port level, but we could build the port level up to 1 with a little bit of time. First things first, though, we'll do it with an airfield. So I'm not going to do it right away. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these transports that are unloading supplies at Vavu. We're going to send them into Suva, and then we're going to pull the 111th, is it, base force? Yeah, the 111th. So we're going to pull the 111th base force out and put it to Raoul for 2 reasons. We're sending this base force because it actually has 10 rifle squads, so it has some defense if he was to land like a very small fragment that it could hopefully help defend itself. It also has only 36 aviation support. So Suva has a lot of aircraft. It has 157 aircraft. It has 231 in aviation support. Some of the units would pull like 70 aviation support or more. I don't want to do that. I want to keep them close to 200 aircraft supportable. So what I'm doing is I'm going to send that unit has a lower amount of aviation support than others. It has a higher amount of combat power than others. And so we'll do that. We have quite a few base forces. We can spare 1. Meanwhile, Suva, we stopped building the airfields, so it was at 7 out of 7, or it's 7 out of 7. You can overbuild capacity, but I don't see a ton of value in building the airfield capacity up past 7. At least not right now. And then I am going to continue building the fortifications up. By dropping the airfield construction, it should also speed up the fortification construction. Meanwhile, what's Nadi at? It's at level 3 airfield, working to level 4, and it's at level 3 forts, working to level 4 as well. Vavu is slowly working its way to having a level 1 airfield, so it can help move aircraft around. The port capacity is at 1. I'm working to get it to 3. When you get it to 3, enemy submarines can't hit ships in port or at dock. So that's a key objective. We're also working on building the fortifications up, which are important. So it's going kind of slowly because we only have 29 engineers and 4 vehicles, and we're trying to build all 3 simultaneously. Might not be a bad idea to stop the fortifications for the moment to see if that'll speed up these guys, because this is only making 5% progress per day. Chaplain of War, thanks for the follow. Appreciated. Meanwhile, we are also going to pull the remaining elements of the 2nd USMC, 2nd U.S. Marine Regiment. We're going to put them into Vavu. So there's some of those elements pulled back due to transports being torpedoed and dock requirements and things like that at Vavu. We pulled the 2nd, 3rd Marine back. There's 4 howitzers, 1 PAC 75mm, 45 motorized support, and a 90mm anti-aircraft gun. That's all going to move down to Vavu to join the other elements of the 2nd Marine Regiment with their combat elements, the infantry elements. So that'll give Vavu roughly 100 assault value to be on the defensive, that and the USMC Parachute Battalion. Pago, meanwhile, has over 300, so it's basically like a division. It's got the 8th Marine Regiment. Between Vavu and Pago, we've got the bulk of the 2nd U.S. Marine Division. In 72 days, we'll get the 6th Marine Regiment that'll arrive, and then what we'll probably do is we'll pull the 2nd USMC Engineer Combat Regiment, so that in a little over 2 months, we'll have the 2nd Marine Division that we can start planning our counteroffensive against Nomaya. So then by then, hopefully in 2 months, once we're into May, June timeframe, I'm hoping we've slowed his advance. I think he loses his amphibious bonus either in June or July, so that we'll start those units planning for an operation to land on New Caledonia, and then we can merge them into one base, probably bring them all to Fiji, replacing them with other units on these bases in defense. The 2nd U.S. Marine Division will probably plan for the operation on New Caledonia, and then also the 6th Australian Infantry Division, and then we'll find one other division, maybe the Ameriseal Division will do it as well. I think they're already planning for Nomaya on their ships on the way to Australia, and that's where we'll counterattack. We could also bring in some tanks for the offensive as well. So we've got the 2nd United States Marine Corps Tank Battalion up here. They're currently in Auckland. They've got some good armored units there. That could be part of the counteroffensive, but it's a little bit early for planning for counteroffensives right now. Well, here's the thing, Sean Mack. If you build airfields everywhere and you don't have strong enough defensive lines where those airfields are, then you're building airfields for the Japanese. That's something you got to think about. One of the things about this game is the Japanese have very inefficient construction compared to the U.S. construction units. U.S. construction units can build rapidly and effectively. They have far more engineering vehicles than Japan. And they get a lot of them, too. Japan can definitely build bases up. They have that ability, but the Allies get way more in that capability. So if we build bases that he can run in and seize, that can be a problem. A 9+ airfield doesn't suffer from overstacking. Good to know, Pat, but I don't think there's a reason to build... I mean, we're not worried about overstacking on Fiji right now, anyway. Penryn probably needs to be reinforced as well. We have a combat engineer regiment there. I'd like to have a little bit more than 60 assault value here, though. They are working on fortifications, though. They've got quite a few. They've got 11,000 supply, and they've got level 3 fortifications. I probably should build an airfield here. It is a very inefficient process. It is definitely a penalty to do so, because it technically can't support an airfield. But if I can get a level 1 airfield at Penryn, then I can actually shuttle aircraft from Pearl down to Palmyra, Christmas Island, and to Penryn. The range for most aircraft to Pago is too long, but Penryn would open up that capability. With that being said, I know our turns are kind of creeping up on hour 20 now regularly. I don't have a lot else to show. I think it's probably about time. Ooh, second 152nd comp. Where's the rest of the unit? Seattle and Kodiak. 151st Combat Engineer Regiment. Kodiak? All the way up in Alaska? Really? Oh, on this island? Well, why the hell? They're just chilling up there, and then, like, another one's down in... Why are they split like that? By the way, it'd be great to get the 201st Infantry Regiment here somewhere where we could use it. This is a very light infantry regiment. There's very little heavy equipment. I don't think it's likely that he would land at Kodiak. We might want to consider pulling these troops back. Just seems like a bad place for him to land. It's not even worth that many victory points. It's a good-sized airfield. He could really play havoc on us. But we have rail connections. Oh, we don't have rail connections. So it would really fuck with Alaska, I guess. Maybe that's not a good idea at this time. Got a lot of engineer units that, like, EABs, engineer vehicles, 13 engineer vehicles, 27 engineers. Wow. That's a good unit. We have to get some of these units out of the U.S. Most of these units that I have in Seattle or San Diego are all unrestricted. Also, quite a lot of flak units there, too, which would be very useful for some of those bases. It's just hard to know what to do with some of them when you have, you know, what he's doing in the Pacific right now, the Eastern Pacific right now. Do we have any troops that we want to pull out here? Coastal Regiment of Anti-Aircraft. I think I'm going to take my troop transports and send them down to San Diego. Okay, and then we'll load up some of those units, the anti-aircraft or engineer units. Pearl does have combat engineers, that's right, but I don't want to leave Pearl too weakly guarded either. They've got a job right now to get better fortifications. Only as level 2 right now. I want to see that higher. Okay. So I think that's going to do it for this turn, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Not as meaningful, not as momentous, not as massive as our previous turns, but still some interesting stuff going on. It's kind of more of a logistical sort of pause and regroup type of a turn. But with that being said, guys, I hope you did enjoy the video. I hope you... ooh, nice, good. We've got moderate rain right now over the carrier group, and it looks like it's supposed to continue raining. So that could also cause him to cancel any raids on Oosthaven and Tigilap. Hopefully it does. Or even spotting our carriers. So I don't think he can recon this far out. It's pretty far away from, like, Swingkang, which is, like, 24 hexes. Pontiac is 23 hexes. Banderjasmin is 25 hexes. Like, some of his flying boats, in theory, might be able to reach, but it's probably unlikely, especially with bad weather. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you guys all taking a look at the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed. To Eris, thanks for the sub. To Like a G-Man, thanks for the bits. And to all of the new followers, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, please let me know your thoughts. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, once again, thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm out.